And we're back for another episode of Startup Hustle, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. If you want to start, own, or build a business, then you're in the right place. We bring you the real truth about what it's like to take something from concept to launch. From growth, innovation, experience, failing, or winning big, we've got you covered. So let's get down to business with another episode of Startup Hustle, brought to you by Fullscale.io. And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here to talk about yet something else that I'm hoping will help you be better at what you do. So, many years ago, I embraced the whole concept of leadership. And as I started to put my arms around it, I realized that there's a whole lot of different forms of leadership, including self-leadership. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, before we get too far into that, I do want to let you know that today's episode of Startup Hustle is sponsored by Fullscale.io, helping you build a software team quickly and affordably. With me today, folks, I've called the doctor. I've got with me Dr. Benjamin Ritter, entrepreneur, podcaster, author, janitor, and everything else at
Pez
Leadership Pez dispenser, and at Leadership and Empowerment Coach at Live for Yourself Consulting. Doctor, welcome to Startup Hustle.
I am so very happy to be here. I think every year I try to add another job to the list. So, maybe I'm wondering what it's going to be next year. I was watching the NASA launch the other day, and I'm like, always wanted to be an astronaut. How do I do that?
You'd be an astronaut, sure. Well, most startup founders and entrepreneurs are trying to go to the moon, so we might be able to have an episode about that. Now, first off, my foot hurts, and I'm not sure if you can help me with that. I said we brought the doctor in, and entrepreneurship comes with a lot of pains, and then I'm getting older. So can we address that part first?
Well, nothing I say should be taken as medical advice because I'm not that type of doctor. I do have a background in collegiate athletics. So my first ever goal was to become a professional athlete. So I studied the body and nutrition a ton. So I might be able to give you some tips, and I probably have some old braces I can lend you. I can ship one over, but that's not my expertise.
Well, as I get older, I may take you up on all of that. But, so before we get too far into this, if you guys want to learn more about what Dr. Ritter does, you can go to liveforyourselfconsulting.com. Just scroll down, click the link in the show notes, take the easy way to learn more about what he does. And I wasn't kidding. You do a whole lot of different stuff. You're Chicago-based social entrepreneur, coach, consultant, mentor, and an expert in the field of personal and professional internal leadership development. So before we talk about what any of that is, how about a little bit of backstory and just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, and thanks for that great intro, by the way. And as I kind of hinted, my first ever goal was to become a professional athlete, which if you are achievement oriented and you have the soul of an entrepreneur, you know that goal encompasses a lot more than just what those few words, entail. Like really, I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning running on the beach. Like if you were to turn on Rudy and watch kind of like any old, like athletically oriented movie of this athlete that wasn't going to make it, but really wanted to make it. And then they followed his story, and then that athlete made it. Like I did all of that, but didn't make it. So, all I did was watch soccer on TV. I basically ignored people because I didn't feel like they were relevant to my goals. I was the epitome of unhealthy obsession towards a specific goal, which you actually see in a lot of entrepreneurs today that are trying to achieve certain professional milestones. Maybe they compare themselves to the Vanderchucks of the world and things like that, and they're just starting out. So they're holding themselves under this, under a lot of pressure to achieve something that really they should have some other goals at the same time for some balance. Because I was a little socially awkward. I didn't really focus on what else I should be focusing on, should be doing. I didn't build a network. I didn't really have any of that balance. So after I did not achieve that goal, I was pretty much left without an identity and nowhere to really turn other than inside myself. And luckily, I took that achievement-oriented personality and moved it towards developing who I was as a person. And so I spent a few years really just studying everything I could to just become like a full individual again. And then never really thought of coaching again. And coaching like reared its ugly head a few times in my life. Not, it's, and kind of, it kept hinting at me, it kept pulling at me to say, hey, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. One time I was headhunted to go work as a full-time coach for a program across the United States. I ended up applying for federal funding for life coaching and receiving it from the government. I was selected for 16 months of life coaching from an organization I was working for at the time. And eventually, when I was kind of working my cubicle position, I was walking to work one day. I'll tell you the story. I was walking to work one day and I was dreading going into work. I was a senior executive in hospital administration. And up to that point, I always just reacted to the jobs that were presented in front of me. I never really took control of my own career, my own professional development. And so I felt stuck. I felt resentful towards the work that I felt like I had to go into every single day. And I was walking into work, looking around, and every person's face that I saw had kind of the same feeling of dread and resentment. And it just felt like I was living in a world that I didn't really belong. And so at that point, I just stopped and asked myself, what am I doing? What do I truly care for? What am I passionate about? Where are my strengths? What challenges do I want to face? And why haven't I thought about this before? With all the knowledge I had in personal professional development, I never really turned it on to myself and took control of my own life and my career. And at that point, I really just plotted out the next 5 or 10 years of my life professionally to really build the network that I needed to support my passions, my values, my goals, and started crafting my current job to really fit that as well. And that led to 3 different paths, and we can expand on any of them. But really, my backstory is a combination of the external environment, what was presented to me, and then reflecting internally and trying to grow in each and every single moment along the way.
So we mentioned before we hit record, I wrote a book called Balance Me, A Realist's Guide to Professional Life. And I got a 3P approach to that: personal, professional, and physical. And, a lot of people talk about life balance or life coaching. I didn't think it was as easy as work life. How important do you think it is to have the well-rounded personal, professional, and physical being?
I just led a 5-week challenge on really how not to lose your shit. And COVID really threw everyone for basically took all the routines and structure that people had in their daily life and threw it in the trash. And so a lot of the buckets that used to be full just from our everyday life ended up being empty. So maybe you stopped working out, or maybe you stopped going to the office, so you started interacting with people that you truly enjoyed. Maybe you stopped your hobby because your hobbies were having to go to some sort of, a martial arts class or any sort of extracurricular. And people were feeling lost and empty without fully understanding the reasons behind that, not fully understanding that how they used to fill themselves up internally in every single different bucket that was missing, that was gone. So there has to be some level of balance. And it doesn't have to be every single day. But if you're ever feeling overstressed or frustrated or anxious, I highly recommend stopping and asking yourself, what part of myself am I not honoring? What part of myself am I not filling up? Is it the physical? Is it the spiritual? Is it the social? Is it the intimate, etc.? So every single different bucket of your being needs to have some level of attention and focus, or else you can get to that point where you're feeling like something's missing.
Yeah, so early in that book, I asked the readers, I said, if you get 100% of your own effort, and when I've spoken to groups in the past, there's always one person that's like, yeah, but I give 110%. Okay, you can only give 100% of your own effort. And so I ask everyone to on the sheet of paper in front of them to put down what percentage of their effort goes in personal, professional, and physical. And this is, of course, after a brief moment to explain what each category is made of. So everyone does that. And then I say, okay, now write down where you'd really like your effort to be. And one of the things is you immediately, with that simple of a explainer and a graph, see how different your reality is from where you'd really like it to be. And I think that one of the things, and this is what I'm excited to talk about with you, is, it's up to you to make those changes. It's up to you to identify why you're not getting the things that you want. And if you're not willing to admit that you are probably the most likely reason you're not getting what you want, well, it might be some time. It might be time to rethink that approach too. So when we talk about self-leadership, if I just ask you, what is self-leadership? What is your reply?
Yeah. And I'll personalize this right now, because that intro we just had was kind of like a bunch of trash in my mouth. I have so much stuff going on right now in terms of like my partner's dog just passing away, moving within the next couple of weeks, some job stuff going on where I was not leading myself appropriately right now at the beginning of this call. I didn't have the clarity of what I needed to do in terms of have a clear mind to do some prep. I didn't have a level of confidence right away because I was too focused and wasn't intentional. And I didn't control, I didn't make time, I didn't prioritize how I needed to do all that pre-work prior to this. So self-leadership to me is knowing what your values are and your goals and really being intentional about that. So holding yourself accountable, prioritizing that in your life. And like, honestly, the main aspect of that is clarity. So what do I need to accomplish and why does that matter to me? And then building the skills that you need to do to actually accomplish that. So what do I need to study, and do I believe in myself to be able to accomplish it? And then because I have clarity and because I have confidence, I can prioritize that in my life. I can make time. I can say no to things that don't align. I can invest in the relationships that matter. And self-leadership as a whole is just really understanding and believing and accepting that the only person that's getting in the way of anything that you want to accomplish is yourself.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And so, all right, so let's say I have a desire to change and I want to do more for myself. Where do I start?
First is just clarity. And to really gain clarity, though, that's a little bit more complicated than just saying, what do you care about? Why do you care about that? And let's actually take steps to get there. So what are the goals? What are the actual, like the daily tasks, monthly tasks, and annual tasks? So before even all that, because a lot of people will come to me as clients and they won't actually know what they want. They just feel stuck. It's about understanding their strengths. So really understanding where they've been successful, what parts of them, what personality traits they've used throughout their life to gain that level of success. So understanding their stories, kind of the milestones in their past. And once they can understand where they've excelled, they can also then evaluate what they truly care about, where they've been happiest, where they've been most energized. And you can take all that information, you can distill that down to a list of values that you then can incorporate as the foundation to how you live your life each and every single day. Who you interact with, the people you have conversations with, the jobs that you do. You can craft any position to incorporate your values, the podcasts you listen to, the books you read. And so basically the first step of this and gaining clarity is creating a little bit more alignment around the why that you have at your core that you might not be fully present on.
Yeah, and and with an expansion on your thought about clarity, I mean, for me, it's just like, I just tell people, I'm like, sit down and write down the things that you want. Like that can be if you look at personal, professional, and physical, or however, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I'm not saying that the way I just describe the way that I do it. And it can be different for anyone, but I think regardless of what path or what input you're following, if you sit down and write out the things that you want, that's a start. Because there's so many. I'm not going to bore people with statistics, but in the book, so people that have written goals do obscenely better than people that don't. And it takes only a minute to write something down. And so you ask what the why is with that. Well, it becomes real. Like something magical happens between your head and your hand. And, there's just like simple things like, so you write it down. Now it's become real. It's there. It's on a piece of paper. And like, there's a lot of different ways to approach things. And, the way, and my take on a lot of this, it's figuring out what you want. And now you start to identify the times and things that you're doing that have little or no value when it comes to achieving those goals. Yeah. Like, where am I wasting time? Because I think the thing that I hear people say to me so much, and I'm curious if you hear the same, they're like, I don't have time. Or it's always about time. It's always, I don't have time, or it's not the right time. Well, here's the reality. The right time's never coming, and you probably do have time. It's how you choose to spend it. So what's some of the input that you get from people? Like, what are the number one excuses or the top excuses that people give you about why they're not getting what they want out of life?
Well, a lot of times people can't see clearly enough to understand that they're getting in their own way. They can't see their fears. They can't see the fact that they feel it's going to be risky or that's going to be uncomfortable. They can't see that they lack confidence in themselves. And so they use excuses like, I don't have time. They use excuses like, I can't say no to my boss. They use
it's excuses. Not my fault.
It's not my fault. It's, oh, I'll do it next year. And then next year becomes the year after that. And it, like you said, if people would sit down, pull out a sheet of paper and just spend 15, 20 minutes on plotting out what their future vision of like their dream world looks like, and then map out a couple different career paths to actually get there, they'd see that the answers are right in front of them. That if they started saying no to the things that are pulling away energy from them, that are draining them, that they actually are complaining about but not taking action to, then they would have a ton of time. And it doesn't take much, right, to make any sort of progress. It takes one little task each and every single day. If you could do one thing towards your vision each and every single day, you will make progress. You will start to build momentum because you'll actually start to believe that it's possible. One of the biggest issues is that people don't believe that their dream is actually possible, despite not even knowing what that is sometimes.
Yeah, and that's actually the way I break it down, because you have to keep in mind that your mind is finicky. And so we'll use a popular example. Some people are like, I want to lose 25 pounds. Your mind doesn't grasp that. You can't just lose 25 pounds. You have to do it 1/2 pound or pound at a time. So your goal should be to lose 5 pounds. Mm-hmm. And you celebrate and because you're close to that milestone at about any given time. If you say that you want to lose 25 pounds and then you lose 5, you're like, shit, I got a long way to go. And it doesn't feel the same. And, another thing too is like, most goals that people want to accomplish, another common goal, I want to buy a house. Well, if you've ever bought a house, you know that is not a singular action. So what are the 80 things that you need to do to get there? Now, I know that those aren't in direct alignment with some of the stuff that you talk about, but if you want the perfect job or career path, there are likely things that you need to do or need to learn on the way to becoming useful or valuable. Or what you need to go. Like, you are Dr. Benjamin Ritter. At some point, you were Benjamin Ritter. So if you wanted to get a doctorate, you had to you didn't just do that overnight, did you?
Well, it was this special online certification.
Let's hope not.
8 hours.
Let's hope not.
As you're talking,
I'd like to get a link. I'd like to be a doctor. So if you could send me that, I'm going to fill out the file. But I mean, the point is like, you can reverse engineer your own success and start to substitute your low value activities for things that get you towards what you want.
Mm-hmm. And self-leadership, you're hitting the nail on the head. Self-leadership is a lifestyle. It's saying that anything that I want to accomplish, I can figure out a way to accomplish it, because there is nothing that is impossible, because my actions are mine to choose. Right. And to your, man, you were just like, every single client I've ever worked with and every single potential client I've ever worked with has always been overworked, have always felt they're too busy. And there's something to say about that, this falsehood of busyness. What does busyness prove? What are you gaining from this idea of being busy? Well, you're able to avoid reflecting on the things that you're really unhappy about and to come up with solutions that will make you uncomfortable. And so if I would almost test every single person, if you feel like you're too busy to make progress, take 2 days, turn off your phone, don't watch TV, don't go hang out with friends, and just be with yourself for a little bit. Be present and see what that can bring to you. And then do some of the journaling exercises that Matt and I were mentioning about figuring out what that vision is, what those goals might be, what do you truly care about, and what little steps you can take to actually find out more and gain more clarity. So maybe it's reaching out to someone that has a position that you really are interested in. Maybe it's like that CEO position at a company that really aligns with your values. Well, figure out how you can speak to people at that organization, right? Connect with them on LinkedIn, send them a quick message. So what are the little things you can do to step out of your comfort zone, to be brave, so to speak, and also just kind of push all the distractions away so you can actually listen to what your mind is telling you.
Yeah, and I think that, to supplement that, it can start very easily. You can start by just literally like training yourself to think, is this a high value or a low value activity?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually want to give you, I created a rating scale that I'd like to share with you, Doctor. And if you want to take it a step further, but it's a 1 to 10. So like a 10 is any activity or action that helps you accomplish multiple goals or find balance in more than one of the 3 P's that I mentioned. A 9 is results or progress for a goal. So like, obviously if you're working at a 9 or a 10 on something, you are making actual and measurable progress towards it. So if you want to learn how to speak a foreign language, if that's one of your goals, sitting down and giving 30 minutes of clear, focused effort towards doing that would be a 9. And that gets you there. Now, in the event that you wanted, I don't know, like the 10s are hard to come by, and set your goals high. And I'm not going to read this whole scale. It's in the book, but like a 4 out of 10 is something where your actions could just be improved. Maybe you're kind of half-assing it. You're maybe like you're showing up, but you're not there. And you held yourself accountable for that. You're like, well, maybe I wasn't in the right headspace, but I was there. Like, do you want a participation ribbon or do you want a trophy? Because they're different, people. They really are. Like a 2 is a 2 out of 10 is something that has no chance of producing positive gain. So we often engage in activities and effort that is self-sabotage. And that's like the opposite of self-leadership. That's like, for example, like you might make the decision to go out and get wasted with your friends on a Friday night. And the trickle-down effect of that is you're scoring 1s and 2s on your readings the next day because you're hungover, you feel like shit. If financial problems were something you're trying to get out of, it certainly didn't help for that. And if you're someone that makes your best decisions when you're drinking or doing that, send me an email and let me know how you do that, because I'm fascinated if you can. And then, and then you have like literally like 0s that results in the opposite. That's like what I just mentioned is, okay, so now you decided to go out with people after work. You were trying to work on finance. You were trying to get in better shape, and you were trying to do something professionally, but you blew your whole Saturday where you could have instead chosen to do a whole bunch of useful stuff because you stayed up until 3 a.m. You woke up feeling like shit. You spent all your money late at night because you thought the right thing to do at that moment was to buy everybody at the bar a drink. You see my point though? Like there's like negative self-leadership. So do you cover any of that stuff? Like, do you talk to when you're speaking to a group or anything about how to avoid what I just described?
Well, usually when clients come to work with me, they're at a point where they're ready to, move to 5 and aboves. They may have some self-sabotaging behaviors, but it's much more easier to say, okay, let's just cut that out. There's a lot less time spent on reframing and really trying to understand where these negative self-leadership kind of characteristics are coming from. But I would say if you're in the 0s to 1s and 2s and 3s to immediately try to go 9 and 10, you're going to have a ton of discomfort, internal struggle, and feel like you're failing, kind of like we were mentioning before in terms of what are the expectations for yourself and how you're going to transition into this intentional life where you are leading yourself consistently. So if you are to 0s, 1s, 2s, and 3s, I would highly suggest you just kind of stop. You're going to say, I'm just going to stop behaving right now. I'm just going to stop acting, and I'm going to pull back and really spend some time understanding the motivations behind my behavior. And look at your social network. Start kind of, I assume if you're in 0s, 1s, and 2s, there are people influencing you that
you're hanging out with the wrong people for sure.
Yeah. Sure. And it would say, so that in that moment, I really would say, let's just put a wall up, move behind it, and really just try to stop for a moment, reflect. Again, we're going back to, what is my vision for myself? Why am I acting this way? What am I afraid of? What doubts do I have? What expectations do I have? And then try to do a complete reset. Now, if you're in the 5s, 6s, and 7s, then you have an opportunity to say, where are the little tweaks that I can make to actually start living more intentionally towards my goals? What conversations do I need to start having? What relationships do I need to invest a little bit more in? And I love that scale. And I think, so Live for Yourself Consulting was created under the understanding that people find change really, really hard and difficult. So how can you create a lifestyle around yourself that literally just supports you on a daily basis, where you don't have to sit down intentionally every single day and rank different things, or, really kind of make a to-do list, because you're living it. But it's going to be, until I'm living 8s and 9s every single day, it's going to be a lot of hard work and a lot of discomfort until you get to that point. And so you are going to have to probably sit back and score your days. You are probably going to have to look at your tasks and say, how does this add value to my life? You are going to have to say, before you go out, is this the most important thing for me to do right now? And making that switch is going to be difficult, just like when you're trying to lose weight in the beginning. But once you can craft a life around you that does relate intentionally to what you're trying to accomplish, things become a lot easier, and you do start building momentum, and you do make a lot more progress in a lot short time.
And one of the things in my book that I challenge people to do is to actually just keep score for a little bit, because you'll look at it, you'll see it, like after you get through just like a little bit of time, because like playing video games, that's like a low value activity. And some of these things suck you in, and they don't help you get what you want. Now, you mentioned something that made me think of the term opportunity cost. And, anytime you choose to do one thing, you're choosing to not do something else. So I think on the most basic levels, keeping it binary, like, is this important or not? And if you're trying to be successful and you want to be a leader, then that often means that your plate's going to fill up pretty soon, quickly, and you have to start making decisions. But how do you counsel or coach people when it comes to determining what's a priority and what's more valuable?
That initial work on clarity is so important, because once you have that baseline of what your vision is and what your values are, then you can start figuring out what goals actually live true to these values and to this vision. Because honestly, whatever you want to achieve as a human being, that's up to you. Like, I can't tell you what's valuable and what's not valuable, but I can help you try to achieve whatever it is you feel that's important. And none of the things that you actually want to achieve in your life, like whatever that job is, whatever that business is, are actually important, other than the fact they help you live your values and help you be more fulfilled and help you feel better about the life that you have, and also helps dictate the people that you want to hang out with. It's all about just enjoying the time that you have and being present, and not worrying about, should I do this? Should I not do this? Who am I to do that? Like, it's basically just trying to minimize that inner critic, trying to minimize that doubt that you have, trying to minimize that dissatisfaction and resentment and stress that you feel, and really just live a more fulfilling life. And so your priorities, you have to create those. You have to decide those. And I think very often people will look towards leaders to say, what should my priorities be? What should I do right now? And that is just not the correct mindset in terms of how to drive yourself and how to live your life. So going back again to this idea of clarity and understanding what's important to you, I'd say, look at the last 5 memories in your life where you were the happiest. What were you doing during those times? What are the similarities between those memories? Where were you the least happy? What are the similarities between those memories? What are the beliefs in those? Who were you hanging out with? Where were you living? And really try to understand the things that energize you, because the things that energize you are not going to energize me. They probably won't. We're all individuals. And then start crafting a life that's revolving around those things, while at the same time trying to understand what challenges and opportunities you want to face, because challenge, innovation, and creativity is a really important value that can be motivating and can help you feel like you're not stuck. And you can incorporate that doing anything. And so once you do that pre-work to really understand what fills you up, then you can start saying what's important to you. And so when I work with clients and they want to do something, I'll say, well, tell me what is important about that. What is that going to help you achieve? How does that help you live true to your values? And very often when someone says, oh, I can't do that, and let's say, well, why can't you do that? What's the worst that could happen? What could you gain from that? Why does that matter to you? So it's, again, we're coming back to this idea of awareness, and really just being aware of your actions, what the outcomes of those actions might be, and what is the meaning behind those actions that you have. And to build that awareness, you do have to do that work. You do have to journal. You do have to pay attention to the things you're doing. Like you said, you could gamify it. So you could start scoring your days, or you could color code your calendar, code things that are red that are under the 5 level of your scale. Code things that are green.
1 to 3 is red, 4 to 6 is yellow, and 7 to 10 is green. And I at one point had a free app that helped you keep track of it. And it was funny. I built an app and gave it away to the world. And then some people would complain about the app, and I'm like, okay, it was free, and there's really no ask for any type of finance. So, I mean, I think that so much of what you said is so true. And I the one thing that I'd like to challenge everyone to do a little bit of is ask yourself, are you the problem? And I think that that's the hardest part that people have, this taking that extreme ownership over their own actions. And you mentioned all that stuff, like you said, as a leader, like if someone were to ask me, if they were like, well, what should I be doing for this and this and this and that? I mean, well, what do you want to do? What do you really want to do? And the thing is that's not always, you can find a lot of professional success by working on your personal or physical side of your life. Because, my whole premise of the thesis statement of my whole book is that the longer, though, it's just having a balance amongst the personal, professional, and physical being is nearly impossible. It's different for everybody. Because some people are like, well, what's perfect balance? I'm like, dude, it could be way different for you than it could be for me. The one thing is if you're completely out of whack, one thing you can count on is the other categories are going to come back to claim that balance. And if you're running 90% of your effort in your professional life, then it's not going to surprise me when your physical and personal life are total dog shit. And now all of a sudden your wife's leaving you, or your kids have problems because you've ignored them for 15 years. And now try to put 90% of your effort in your professional life while you're dealing with those things, or going through a divorce, or maybe you've completely ignored your own body and now you have a heart attack, God forbid. And, now the thing is it's coming to, the balance is coming to claim itself on some level. So I think part of it's like that awareness of it. So, and I'm curious. So if I were to ask you, how do I know when I'm successful? What's your answer to that?
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to preface this with, I think everyone should make a list of statements that fill in the blank. I have to blank, or I can't blank. So basically just make a running list of I have to, and then fill in whatever you think you have to do. And then I can't, and then fill in whatever it is that you can't do. And I would do this under the, get in the mindset of whatever this future vision is, or whatever your goals are, and start examining.
I have to exercise, or I can't lose weight. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And thanks for those examples. And I think in terms of success, very often our success is, relate to I have to's. And the success we want is, a lot of the time it relates to the things we can't also do or achieve that we think. And success, man, again, this goes back to this idea of whatever your goals aren't really important. Like I used to, whenever I first got into coaching, I gave this presentation on the topic. The worst advice I ever heard was to find your purpose. And it took into this idea that, whatever you think you need to achieve, if there's a higher being in the world, and your achievements basically are meaningless because there's something bigger and greater. If there isn't a higher being in the world, your achievements are again meaningless because there's no other purpose than just to be happy. This idea of success, that I need to achieve certain things, I need to have certain things materialistically, or I have to have certain status. That's all in your own head, right? You're setting, you've created all of your own expectations. So your level of success should literally be, am I happy with myself today? And then we'll get into this idea of confidence, where basically confidence is accepting who you are at any given present moment, understanding that you are as good as you can be at any moment as you can be, right? You can't change today. You can't change who you were, and you can only work towards who you want to be in the future. So why shouldn't you accept yourself for who you are? So success, honestly, I believe, is just a mindset that you can have no matter what you've done. It's a lot easier to feel successful if you're making progress towards your values and your goals. 100%. It's a lot easier to feel successful if you have people that are surrounding you that validate you each and every single day. And but it's a lot harder to feel successful if you're holding yourself to certain standards, like I have to achieve something, or what are people thinking of me at this, point in time. And so overall, like, long answer short, it's success is the mindset that you're successful and the acceptance of yourself. And I'm not sure what you think about that.
That's actually, I was, for me, if you ask me that question, I would say when you feel successful, which is that mind. But it's funny because, I poked around for years, and I've looked at a lot of different stuff, and I've made a habit over the last 15 years of chasing down interesting, successful, and talented people to try to discuss with them the who, what, where, why, and when, and it was this podcast and me calling up so I worked in the music industry for quite a while, and my last book I wrote with Joel Cummins, the keyboardist of Umphrey's McGee, and I remember it. I was like, this podcast had just taken off, and I was like, oh man, we got all these downloads and whatever, and I was like, how do you know when that's good? He goes, whenever you feel good about it. And I was like, mind blown, because it was the simplest. I love binary, like, simplicity, anything. And that's the thing. It's like, you're successful when you feel successful. There's not a predefined box that you get in there. Now I want to reemphasize it's going to be different for everybody. I mean, Doc, your version of success and mine are guaranteed to be different. And I think that's the same for anyone. So, I think if you get yourself, or I think the key to so much stuff when it comes to self-leadership is to continue to push yourself on a path that gets you in and around anything you're passionate about. Because if you're passionate about stuff, it makes it so much easier to do stuff. And that's like the super generalized delivery on that. But, so at Full Scale, and once again, today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io. What we try to do is line technology, like tech service workers, up with companies that need their services. And the number one thing that we're looking for is, can we line someone's passion up with someone else's need? And it doesn't feel like work when you're doing that. It does on some days, but it makes it so much better because, look, we all have good days. We all have bad days. It is what it is. And what really I can guarantee you is your likelihood of quitting something that you're passionate about is dramatically lower than the likelihood of you quitting something you aren't passionate about. And, that's the whole thing is like, and really in the end, and I was talking to a good friend that was having some issues personally. And here's the thing, is a call to me with your problems can go, it depends on who you are. It can go well or not, depending on your impression, but I'll listen and whatever. And you're invariably going to hear me say, all right, so look, there's a lot of shit that isn't going well for you right now. I'm going to tell you right now, if you sit there and continue to sink, more stuff is going to go worse, and it's all going to seem like it's crumbling down. You have to make the decision whether you want to sink or swim. So start fucking paddling right now. Because that's it. Like, it's still binary. Like, and that was the thing I struggled with, and honestly ran into a lot of resistance from a lot of people because people wanted to fight me on that. In the end, it's yes or no, black or white, zeros and ones. And like, yes, there's a ton of complexity on top of all that, but you kind of get down to the yes or no. And I know that oversimplifies things, but do you think it can be that simple?
Yes.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
So basically what I wanted.
You know what? Hang on. But sometimes I throw it up near the rim and I just hope the guest is like, and you're from Chicago, so we'll go with the Jordan reference, and slam it down. But yes, thank you.
Well, I thought that just went along with this idea of, keeping it simple. And
I like it.
Very often, and one of the reasons why we get in our own way and why we don't lead ourselves is because we don't keep it simple, or we come up with excuses. And so instead of paddling, we just throw our oars up in the air and we say, I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, you had paddles and you're in a boat, so you could literally row somewhere. Like, it's not that difficult. We get in our own way. We don't make commitments. And very often we hesitate. And, as an athlete, hesitation was basically like failure.
Not good.
Not good. And the same thing in business. Hesitation, some people say, oh, it's great, good to hesitate, it's good to, be patient, but patience and hesitation are very different. Like hesitation is this idea that I don't know what to choose and I'm stuck in this indecision. And so we don't make a commitment. And if we don't make a commitment internally, then our actions, show that. Our mindset shows that. And so we focus on that hesitation. We focus on these fears of failure and this idea of risk, and whatever you focus on exists, right? It actually gets stronger. Our minds have this really great tendency to whatever we focus on and is basically like we're investing in it. So if you're in this state of hesitation, the state of a lack of commitment, that is just going to grow the longer you focus on that. So if you could just say, I'm going to paddle, I'm going to move forwards, I'm just going to go, like you will be amazed by what you can actually accomplish from that, even if you don't know what the hell you're doing at any given point in time.
Well, that's the whole point. So like, are you going to feel better at the bottom of the ocean floor? Because if that's the case, then just quit and sink, because get there, because if you really truly think about that, going halfway in that situation is still drowning. Like you can't kind of not drown. Like you need to be above the water or below it. And, I think that I like your example of the difference between patience and hesitation. Like that is a big difference. Like hesitation's having a wide open shot and not knowing whether you want to pass or shoot. Patience is waiting for a wide open shot. Mm-hmm. Or at least a shot. And then on top of all that, and the famous Wayne Gretzky, you're going to miss 100% of the shots you never take.
Yeah. And I think people they're confusing their hesitation with patience. They're saying, oh, I'll do this later on, when really they're just hesitating and not actually being patient. So they're making excuses and they're thinking they're being patient. And I'd say sinking is better than not doing shit. Like, sorry if you make the decision, yeah, we've all swear. Yeah, you can swear, you can say it all, but yeah.
But I'll respect your decision to sink more than you sitting there not picking one or the other. And I actually said that to my friend. I said, look, because there were struggles there, and it started personal. I said, but look, if you want to quit, then just do it and just quit, because it'll be easier if you get on with whatever it is that you're going to do next. But don't, and that's another thing I see a lot of people do, is they'll throw away 2 other things over something else unrelated. And leadership and self-leadership and self-discipline are about doing the things that you need to do the most at the time that you least want to do them. It's not always about being joyful and happy about what needs to get done. Sometimes you just have to do shit. We gave a 1 through 10 scale and a lot of different examples, but I'm going to tell you right now that anything worth achieving takes a lot of work. I have yet to disprove my theory that success demands payment in advance. There's a lot of preparation that goes into that. So if I want to be successful, like according to your 3 C's and the other stuff, I know that we were looking for clarity, confidence, and control. But how do I plan that? Because I can't plan having clarity. That's difficult for me. Now, when I get it, it's very powerful, and I've learned to recognize it. But I can't say, Doc, at 8 o'clock tonight, I'm going to have clarity. I struggle with that. So, but I think a lot of people do.
Well, so I founded LFY Consulting, Live for Yourself Consulting, under the pretenses of the LIVE system. So LIVE was the initial model that I founded my practice on. And then through working with clients, I realized that the type of client that succeeded using the LIVE system had the 3 C's. So I had to first focus on developing the 3 C's, and then we could use the LIVE system. And so you need to have clarity. We need to build a level of confidence that you can actually accomplish the goals that you have in your mind. And then you need to have control where your emotions aren't getting in the way. Like your desire to go have drinks with a bunch of friends and buy a round of shots for everyone. Like you can control that emotion and say, I'm still going to be able to take action towards the things that I need to take action towards. You can control yourself. You can prioritize yourself. You have a semblance of emotional intelligence. And then you can actually use the LIVE system, which is basically a decision-making tool that you said, like a planning tool. So you have life, intentions, values, and expectations. Life are the goals that you set for yourself that relate to your vision. I are your intentions. Are you actually acting towards those goals? Are the thoughts in your mind related to supporting those goals? Can they filter through your values? Are your values at the foundation to ensure that you have a high level of motivation every single day? Because like you said, if you care about your work, you're more likely to stick with it. You're more likely to get up and actually take action towards it. And then E is your environment. Do those decisions relate to creating, or do they interact with an environment that supports those goals, those intentions, and those values? So everything from where you live to the people you interact with, all the relationships you have, even the customers you deal with, do they relate? And so you plan towards basically living that aligned life through that system.
So, and I like the comments on control, because a lot of people are like, I don't feel like I'm in control of really anything. Obviously, and that makes sense. Like if you can't gain control over your own decisions, like there's one thing you can control. It's your own output and your own attitude, and in most cases, your own decisions. Like now, some of that involves gaining control. In my opinion, involves making some tough decisions, because we mentioned before, like if you're at the bottom end of that value scale with your decisions, a lot of that has to do with the people that are around you, and sometimes eliminating them. And that's tough, because sometimes they're your own family, and that can be a tough thing. Now, in regards to confidence, as we kind of round out this episode of Startup Hustle, once again brought to you by Fullscale.io. So confidence is something that I personally, according to my wife, have too much of. And then many people in life don't have enough of. So, what's your input for those listening on how to gain more confidence on your way to control and clarity?
Yeah. And I'll tie this in with control too, this idea of relationships, because I would love all our listeners, given a ton of activities today, to list out basically 3 of your relationships that are causing you the most stress. And then to either figure out a way to mediate that. So what sort of action can you take to mediate that or to improve that level of stress? And if you can't communicate in a way that improves that relationship, to then say goodbye to that relationship. And then I'd even list out 3 people that actually support you and are related to your goals, or 3 people that you want to interact with that are related with your goals that can support you. And then create an action step to build that relationship, to invest in it, or to actually get it started. Because also the people you surround yourself with, that can create or take away confidence for sure. And you do need confidence to be able to take risks, to be okay with discomfort, to take action. Confidence is really 4 things. I think very often people forget that confidence is just a belief. It's also a feeling that you can create at any time, just like a belief. It's a skill, so you can actually study and create greater confidence just through simple exercises. And it's a commitment. This goes back to what we discussed before. So can you commit to just having confidence and believing in yourself? And very often we listen to, the little inner critic in our minds. We believe the negative talk that we chatter away with every single day. Like, what did that person think of me? Or I can't do this, or I don't deserve that. Instead of supporting ourselves and changing that inner voice through figuring out, okay, if confidence is the feeling of feeling full and energized, I'm going to do things that make me feel full and energized through my day, but before I have to do something that feels risky. If it's a belief, I'm going to write affirmations and basically talk to myself throughout the day. I'm going to surround myself with people that help me feel a certain way. I'm going to make a commitment that every day I'm going to wake up and say, I feel confident. And I'm just going to surround myself with things that relate to building that skill. So I'm going to listen to podcasts that relate to confidence. I read books that relate to confidence. And so are you taking that action towards instilling that confidence within yourself?
Well, and you can look, the mind is a computer. It really, in its most basic state. So what are you uploading into your operating system, and what are you surrounded with? One of the examples I use in Balance Me is energy and attitude, and the people you're around are very much like a contagious virus. And this is proven, if you take someone and you put them in a room for half a day or an hour with people that are confident, uplifting, saying great stuff, people come out of that room saying, wow, they're positive. You put someone in this can't do, negative, shitty attitude environment, then they come out of that room feeling negative, complaining, whatever. And so much of it, so the episode of Startup Hustle that was published live today was about public speaking. And that's something that people fear more than anything else. Like, more people would rather die than speak publicly, which is crazy. But as we went through and we talked about it, so much of it just came down to reps and practice. Like, practice, people. And in the great Allen Iverson, practice, we're talking about practice. Yes, we are talking about practice. It does actually matter. Like, and that's the thing. So practice the things that you're not confident about, including having control over the people that you're around. Because those things definitely, I mean, I think that confidence and control, like those parlay off each other big time. Because if you don't have the confidence to tell the people no that are either doubting you or putting you in shitty situations, well, without those things, you're definitely not going to get to your third C of clarity. Now, clarity is a scary, powerful thing when you get it right. Like, and one of the things is like, and this kind of ebbs and flows, but I can look back and literally and my timeline as an entrepreneur, I can tell you the times, like almost down to days, months, and years of when I had exceptional amounts of clarity. And the result after was me doing some of the most mind-blowing stuff that I felt that I've ever done. And I'm 45 years old now, and I've gained a better sense of acuity when it comes to understanding when I have clarity. But as we end this episode, let's go ahead. I'd like to hear your input about taking advantage of clarity, because I'm real finicky when I have it, and I have an amazing wife. I could say, hey, I got something going on right now, and I need to just be by myself to get it out of my head. And she'll clear my plate, man. She'll take the kid. She'll make sure I'm not disturbed, because those moments of clarity for me are delicate. And when I've got them, I get a ton of shit done. I can't schedule them. I've tried. I have a hard time doing that. That's why I'm fascinated with my rock star buddies, because those dudes have to have that clarity on at like 10:23 for song 4 of the second set. And like, everyone knows and talks about on the internet after if they don't have it. But so what's your take on maximizing clarity once you have it?
Mm-hmm. If your life is set up intentionally, like what you're doing is related to your vision and your goals and your values, and you're surrounding yourself intentionally with information that relates to all that as well, clarity will come up at just the craziest moments. You'll just be walking outside and all of a sudden get a new idea. You'll solve problems in the shower, and you'll be reading a book and all of a sudden figure out the answer to the thing that's been bugging you, or understand what a client needs to do to finally actually move forward to something that's holding them back. And in those moments of clarity, you respect them. You don't say, okay, I'll write that down later. No, you immediately make space for that moment of clarity. If you can, right? Usually you can, but you immediately make space for that clarity, and you jot down that epiphany, and you start fleshing it out a little bit, because when there's a really great book called Big Magic, and basically the whole premise of the book is to just honor creativity when it comes to you, when it presents itself. And when clarity presents itself, honor it and dive into it. And more often than not, like, you will find out as you create a lifestyle that is more attuned to your passions and values, and the relationships around you are also attuned to that, these moments of clarity you'll get more and more of them than ever before. And so honoring them you won't have to make as much space. But initially, I would say if you get that hint of clarity, stop what you're doing, pull out a pen and paper, or open up a Word document on your computer, and just honor it.
It's funny you said that, because you mentioned taking a shower, which sometimes I do have some of my better ideas in the shower. One of those things is mowing my lawn. So a few years ago, I actually had a lawn service, and then I had realized that I had cut myself off from an activity that often. So I fired my lawn company, and it's funny because it was just a couple weeks ago, like halfway through mowing my lawn, I find myself abandoning my lawnmower and beelining into my house, just dripping in sweat, in the middle of a Kansas City, like 80 degree or humid, 80% humidity day, 90 degrees, just sit down. And like, what ended up me sitting in front of my laptop and purging, getting all this out of myself for like 3 hours. And that's the whole thing. Thank you for clarifying some of that for me, because I think that I have intentionally and potentially unconsciously built my own reality to support those things. Because I mentioned like being able to have communication with my wife and an understanding. Because here's the thing, I don't raise that flag a whole lot. You know, like I really don't. I mean, one of them I look back. So the last book that I wrote, well, crazy. I had that moment and it just started pouring out of me. I wrote 13,000 words in 24 hours, which is insane. I actually sent that to my editor afterward, who is the kind of person that tells me when it sucks, trust me. And I sent it to him and he read it and I hadn't even edited it. It's just like he replied, he said, "Did you find the perfect combination of coffee and Adderall?" And I actually replied, I said, "Maybe ... but I don't know where the rest of it came from." Now, here's the thing. I didn't write a single word for that book for like 4 straight months. So it just came pouring out, but I had one little thing that distracted me and tipped me over. And that's when it stopped. So now, and I'm real adamant about this. And sometimes people think I'm nuts because if you work with me long enough, you're going to have me come in and I'll be like, "Dude, I haven't slept in 2 days." And that's because I'm trying to ride that horse until it won't ride anymore. And I think that that's such a key thing. And you know, it took me a while to understand that. And the challenge that I'm going to give for those of you listening that are entrepreneurs is try to position yourself into the thought process of how many moves ahead am I thinking? The great chess masters of the world are 5, 6 moves ahead. Now that might not sound like a whole lot, but all these moves become exponential. So it's exponentially harder to fully think out all the possibilities 2 moves ahead in chess, much less 4, 5, 6. So, you know, I think if you find that clarity, ride that horse, people, ride it, ride the wave, whatever you want to call it. But, and I like the idea. I actually don't like it. I love the idea of having intention to build an environment that fosters the creativity and clarity that you look for. Because if you get, I'm telling you, you get yourself in that zone, man, and don't waste it. Don't waste it. Like you were saying, like now I didn't have it in my pocket, but I even have like a little like reporter like notepad. There's people that my neighbors probably think I'm fucking crazy, by the way, because like I'm sitting there like writing in a notepad halfway through mowing my front lawn. But don't, because I have been guilty in the past. I'll write that down later. And literally like 5 minutes later, I'm like, damn, what was that? Mm-hmm. Now, my mom would tell me it couldn't have been that important if I forgot it, but I disagree. Because sometimes those are also the pieces of things you put together for something else down the road. So, all right. So I would be a terrible host after all of this time if I didn't give you a couple minutes to wrap up all of the wild stuff we talked about. So I'm just going to give you the mic and hear what you have to say on our way out of this episode.
Well, it's supposed to be binary, right? So really just get out of your own way and go do whatever the hell you want to do with your life. But, you know, like make a commitment. So I'd ask yourself, you know, are you spending time on the things that you truly care about and want to move towards? Or are you sitting, you know, each and every day saying, I wish I could be doing X, Y, Z. And so take the I wish I could be doing X, Y, Z and say, I am going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to do this, period. And then pick one thing, one action item to do. Pick one person to connect to that's related to that, and then consistently show up each and every single day. Now, we were talking about honoring creativity and clarity, and one of the worst things that you can do is they actually have studies that show this. Your brain stops working in the background when you watch TV. So if you find yourself watching TV each and every single day and you're not where you want to be in life, cut your TV time by an hour. Just cut your TV time by an hour. Take that hour and then start doing things that relate to whatever it is that you want to accomplish in life that you haven't achieved yet. And trust me, that will build momentum. You will have greater moments of clarity. You will take action and you will feel better, which is the whole point of everything. You will just feel better.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to say on the way out is if you want to accomplish something, if you can find someone else that's done it, and just go talk to them about it. It's so much easier to ask the people on top of the mountain to pull you up than it is to climb up on your own. And regardless of where you're at in life, there's always someone that is likely at a higher peak than you. So you can really make a living asking those on top to continue to pull you up. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to do. Speaking of that, man, now I'm all fired up. So now I got to get out of here. I will see you next time.
See you later. Thanks for having me.